The story of the 12 tribes of Israel isn't just a biblical genealogy. It's one of the most influential ancestral blueprints in human history. These 12 tribal lines didn't just shape the destiny of ancient Israel. They continue to echo through modern religious, cultural, and even political identities. But beneath the familiar names, Judah, Levi, Benjamin, lies a tangled web of power struggles, exiles, miracles, betrayal, and mystery that few truly understand. What if I told you that not all 12 tribes made it to the finish line, that some were scattered so far, so wide, and so thoroughly lost that their fates became the stuff of legend? What happened to them? Were they absorbed into foreign empires, erased by war, or are their descendants still walking among us, unknowingly carrying ancient bloodlines? To truly grasp the story of these tribes, we have to rewind to one man, Jacob, later renamed Israel. His life is a drama of deception, vision, romance, and survival. Born the younger twin of Esau, Jacob's path to becoming the father of an entire nation is marked by cunning moves and divine encounters. Through his marriages to Leah and Rachel, and their handmaidens Bilhah and Zilpah, Jacob fathers 12 sons, each destined to become the patriarch of a tribe. But these sons were far from a united brotherhood. The early chapters of their story are riddled with envy, betrayal, and emotional tension, from the jealousy of Joseph's dreams to the conspiracy that led to his sale into slavery. The dysfunction in this family laid the foundation for a saga that would shape the spiritual history of the world. Each son had his own unique personality, and each tribe inherited characteristics, destinies, and even geographical roles that matched their origin stories. Some tribes would rise to fame and power, like Judah, from whom King David and Jesus would later descend. Others, like Reuben or Simeon, would fade into the shadows of history. So what really happened to each tribe? Why were some blessed and others cursed? How did political turmoil, exile, and religious transformation scatter them across the earth? And most importantly, what legacy do they leave behind today? Jacob's life is one of the most dramatic narratives in the Old Testament, and it all begins with a struggle. From the moment of his birth, grasping the heel of his twin brother Esau, Jacob was destined to wrestle for identity, blessing, and legacy. Unlike Esau, the rugged hunter, Jacob was cunning, strategic, and ambitious. His acquisition of the birthright and blessing, though controversial, set the stage for a lineage that would shape nations. After fleeing his brother's wrath, Jacob found himself in the household of his uncle Laban. There, the complex saga of the 12 sons begins. Jacob fell in love with Rachel, but was deceived into marrying her older sister Leah first. This would spark years of rivalry, emotional pain, and a strange race for children between sisters and their handmaids. What followed was the birth of 12 sons, each under a unique cloud of tension, hope, and divine intervention. Leah bore the first 4 sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Reuben, the eldest, should have held great honor, but his later actions would cost him dearly. Simeon and Levi would be known for their violent vengeance. Judah, however, would emerge as a central figure, one whose descendants would include kings and, eventually, the Messiah. Rachel, struggling with infertility, gave her maid Bilhah to Jacob, resulting in Dan and Naphtali. Leah responded by giving her maid Zilpah, who bore Gad and Asher. Then Leah herself bore 2 more sons, Issachar and Zebulun, and a daughter, Dinah. Finally, Rachel, after much anguish, gave birth to Joseph, whose story would transform the fate of the family, and later Benjamin, her second son, who was born in sorrow and cost Rachel her life. These 12 sons were not just brothers, they were founders. Each name held prophetic meaning. Each story reflected the dynamics of a broken but chosen family. And though born in conflict, these sons would go on to father tribes that carried the identity of Israel for generations. But before that, their personal flaws, jealousies, and actions would define the course of history. As the 12 sons of Jacob grew into men, their families multiplied. But their story took a dramatic turn when famine struck the land of Canaan, and they were forced to seek survival in Egypt. What started as a family reunion between Joseph, now a powerful leader in Egypt, and his estranged brothers soon became the birthplace of a nation. Under Joseph's protection, the Israelites thrived, but that protection died with him. Over generations, the memory of Joseph faded, and the Israelites' numbers grew so vast that the new Pharaoh saw them as a threat. What followed was one of history's most brutal shifts, from honored guests to oppressed slaves. The Israelites were subjected to forced labor, building Egypt's cities and monuments under relentless cruelty. Yet, even in bondage, they continued to multiply, as if defying their captors with sheer survival. It was during this period of unbearable suffering that the tribes began to truly emerge as distinct entities. Though united by ancestry, each group retained its own leadership, customs, and roles. They were no longer just 12 families. They were 12 tribes under oppression, awaiting deliverance. Enter Moses, a man born into a Hebrew family but raised in Pharaoh's palace. His life bridged two worlds. After fleeing Egypt and encountering God in the burning bush, Moses returned with a mission to confront Pharaoh and liberate the tribes of Israel. The Exodus was more than just an escape. It was a redefining of identity. Through plagues, divine interventions, and the miraculous parting of the Red Sea, the Israelites witnessed the raw power of the God of their fathers. They were led into the wilderness, not just as refugees, but as a people chosen for a covenant. At Mount Sinai, the tribes received the law. Each tribe stood before the mountain as Moses delivered commandments that would form the core of their society. It was here that their spiritual and national identity took root. The journey was harsh, the people often rebellious, and the unity fragile. But for the first time, the descendants of Jacob stood not as scattered families, but as a nation bound by purpose. The wilderness would test them, but it would also prepare them for the promise ahead and the land that awaited their inheritance. The journey through the wilderness was long, painful, and purifying. After 40 years, a new generation of Israelites stood on the brink of the promised land, Canaan. Under the leadership of Joshua, Moses' successor, the tribes prepared to take what had been promised to their ancestor Abraham. But Canaan wasn't empty. It was filled with fortified cities, war-hardened kings, and pagan cultures entrenched in idolatry. The conquest was not a swift invasion, but a campaign filled with epic battles and divine interventions. Jericho, the city with impenetrable walls, fell not through siege, but through obedience and faith after 7 days of marching and the blast of trumpets. Other cities like Ai and Hazor would fall too, but not without casualties, moral failures, and internal tensions. As territory was claimed, the next challenge emerged: how to divide the land among the 12 tribes. This process was far from arbitrary. It was a sacred act, carried out under the guidance of God and the high priest, using the Urim and Thummim. Each tribe received a portion based on size and divine will. Judah, the tribe of leadership, received a vast southern region, including the future city of Jerusalem. Ephraim and Manasseh, the 2 sons of Joseph, were granted large central territories, making Joseph's inheritance a double portion. Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh chose to settle east of the Jordan River on lands already conquered. Then there was Levi, the priestly tribe. They were not given a territory of their own. Instead, they were scattered across cities within every other tribe's land. Why? Because their role was spiritual, not territorial. They were to minister in the tabernacle, teach the law, and preserve the sacred traditions. Their inheritance was the Lord Himself. This distribution set the stage for tribal identities to solidify. Each tribe had its own land, leaders, and responsibilities. They lived with autonomy but also with a shared covenant, and yet seeds of division were already being planted. Borders created distance, jealousies arose, and without a central monarchy, the tribes often drifted into cycles of rebellion, idolatry, and civil war. Still, this was the golden opportunity, the moment when the tribes could thrive in the land they were born to inherit. They had gone from a family to slaves to wanderers, and now, at last, a nation rooted in sacred soil. For centuries, the 12 tribes lived in the land of Canaan as a loose confederation, connected by faith and ancestry, but divided in leadership and loyalty. Without a king or central government, they were ruled by judges, charismatic leaders raised by God during times of crisis. This period was chaotic, marked by internal strife, repeated cycles of rebellion, and constant threats from external enemies like the Philistines and Amalekites. The tribes eventually grew weary of this instability. They looked around at neighboring nations with kings and armies and cried out for a monarch to unify and protect them. Despite warnings from the prophet Samuel that a king would tax them, draft their sons, and possibly lead them astray, the people insisted. God relented, and thus began the era of the united monarchy. Saul, from the tribe of Benjamin, was chosen as the first king. Tall, handsome, and militarily capable, Saul initially united the tribes under one banner. But his disobedience to God cost him the throne. His downfall revealed the dangers of pride and the importance of spiritual obedience over political power. David, a shepherd from the tribe of Judah, rose next. Anointed while still young, David became a warrior, a poet, and Israel's most beloved king. Under his leadership, the tribes experienced real unity. Jerusalem was established as the capital. The Ark of the Covenant was brought to the city, and a new vision for Israel's future emerged. David's reign was not without scandal. His sins were many, but his heart remained loyal to God. His dynasty was promised an eternal throne, a prophecy that would echo through messianic expectations for centuries. Solomon, David's son, inherited a kingdom at peace. Known for his wisdom and wealth, Solomon built the magnificent temple in Jerusalem, a spiritual and national center for all 12 tribes. During his reign, Israel reached its peak in prosperity, culture, and international influence. The 12 tribes, though distinct, were at their most unified. But that unity was fragile. Beneath the grandeur, old tensions simmered, especially over taxation and forced labor. Solomon's policies favored Judah and the south, while burdening the northern tribes. And once Solomon died, those cracks would become irreversible fractures. The United Kingdom of Israel, a dream realized under David and Solomon, was about to split in two, forever changing the fate of the 12 tribes. After Solomon's death, his son Rehoboam inherited the throne. The kingdom was still grand, but its unity hung by a thread. When representatives of the northern tribes came to the new king, they pleaded for relief from the heavy taxes and forced labor Solomon had imposed. Rehoboam had a choice: listen to his elders and ease their burden, or listen to his young peers and double down. He chose arrogance. "I will make your yoke heavier," he declared. That one decision shattered the fragile unity of the tribes. 10 of the 12 tribes rebelled and broke away, forming the northern kingdom of Israel with Jeroboam, a former official under Solomon, as their king. Only Judah and Benjamin remained loyal to Rehoboam, forming the southern kingdom of Judah. From this moment on, Israel was divided. two nations with separate capitals, kings, and even religious practices. Jeroboam, afraid that pilgrimages to Jerusalem in the south would undermine his authority, created alternative worship sites in Bethel and Dan. He erected golden calves, echoes of Israel's darkest sins, and declared, "These are your gods, O Israel." Idolatry spread quickly, and the northern kingdom slid into spiritual decay. Politically, the northern kingdom of Israel was unstable. Kings came and went through coups, assassinations, and foreign alliances. Despite moments of strength under leaders like Omri and Ahab, the kingdom was riddled with corruption and rebellion. Prophets like Elijah, Elisha, Hosea, and Amos rose to call the people back to God, but their cries were mostly ignored. Meanwhile, the southern kingdom of Judah, though more stable, wasn't innocent. It had its own share of corrupt kings and spiritual decline. However, it also had reformers like Hezekiah and Josiah, who brought revival and temporarily restored faithfulness. The presence of the temple in Jerusalem and the line of David helped preserve Judah's identity longer than Israel's. The split didn't just divide a kingdom, it divided families, traditions, and the destiny of God's chosen people. The northern tribes became increasingly isolated, both spiritually and politically, and as foreign powers rose, the divided kingdoms became vulnerable. What followed would be catastrophic for the northern kingdom and mysterious for its people. The age of exile was coming, and with it, the disappearance of 10 entire tribes from the pages of history. In 722 BCE, the mighty Assyrian Empire stormed through the northern kingdom of Israel. The capital city, Samaria, fell after a brutal siege, and with it, 10 of the 12 tribes were swept into the shadows of history. The Assyrians had a chilling strategy: mass deportation. They forcibly removed large portions of the population and scattered them across their empire. In their place, they settled foreigners, creating a mixed population that would later be known as the Samaritans. The 10 tribes, Reuben, Simeon, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Ephraim, and Manasseh, disappeared from the biblical narrative. There is no detailed record of their return, no grand homecoming, just silence. So what happened to them? Some scholars believe they were absorbed into the cultures where they were exiled, losing their distinct identities over generations. Others suggest they intermarried and assimilated so deeply that their lineage vanished entirely. But that hasn't stopped speculation and fascination. Over the centuries, theories emerged from every corner of the globe. Some claimed the tribes migrated east and became ancestors of groups in Persia, India, or even China. Others connected them to the Pashtuns of Afghanistan, the Igbo of Nigeria, or the Native Americans of North America. These theories range from scholarly to wildly speculative, but they all share one thing: the mystery burns on. In Jewish folklore and apocalyptic literature, the lost tribes are often portrayed as hidden but not destroyed. Some texts describe them living beyond the mythical Sambation River, a place that only the Messiah could cross. Others suggest they would one day return and reunite with Judah, restoring the full house of Israel. In modern times, the search intensified. European explorers, missionaries, and rabbis alike searched the earth for clues. In the 20th and 21st centuries, DNA testing and anthropology have fueled both skepticism and curiosity. Some groups, like the B'nai Menashe of India or the Beta Israel of Ethiopia, claim descent from these ancient tribes and have even been recognized by the State of Israel. But the truth remains elusive. Were the 10 tribes truly lost? Or were they scattered like seeds, waiting for a season to reemerge? The Bible leaves the door open. The prophets Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Jeremiah speak of a future reunion. a regathering of all 12 tribes under one king, one covenant. The mystery of the lost tribes isn't just about missing people. It's about an unfinished story, a story still waiting for its final chapter. While 10 tribes vanished into exile, 2 remained, and their survival shaped the course of history. The tribes of Judah and Benjamin, along with the scattered Levites, made up the southern kingdom of Judah, which managed to withstand the Assyrian threat. But they too would face judgment. In 586 BCE, the Babylonian Empire, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, conquered Jerusalem. The temple was destroyed and much of the population was exiled to Babylon. But unlike the northern tribes, Judah maintained its identity in exile. The prophets Ezekiel, Daniel, and later Ezra and Nehemiah helped preserve the culture, laws, and lineage. And eventually, a remnant returned and rebuilt. This survival is why the term Jew comes from Judah. The descendants of this southern kingdom became the Jewish people, preserving their identity for over 2,500 years through diaspora, persecution, and return. The Levites, who had been scattered throughout the other tribes, also survived. Though landless, they maintained their spiritual duties. The Kohanim, priests, and Levites today trace their ancestry to this tribe, continuing ancient traditions to this very day. In modern times, the longing for reunification hasn't faded. Prophetic visions of all 12 tribes returning still echo in religious communities. Some believe the Messianic era will bring them back together, fulfilling ancient promises. Genetic studies have added complexity. Groups like the Beta Israel of Ethiopia and the B'nai Menashe of India claim descent from lost tribes. DNA research has both supported and challenged these claims, but their cultural and religious devotion is undeniable. Many of these groups have been welcomed into modern Israel, reigniting debate over who truly belongs to the ancient house of Israel. Even outside of Judaism, the legacy lives on. Christianity often spiritualizes the tribes, linking them to the apostles or end-time prophecies. Islam, too, respects the lineages of Jacob and the tribes, recognizing them as prophets and righteous leaders. But perhaps the most powerful legacy of the tribes is not just their history, but their symbolism. The idea that a people born in conflict, scattered by war, tested by exile, can endure, adapt, and still look toward redemption. The story of the 12 tribes isn't over. It lives on in traditions, scriptures, and in the hearts of those who still seek to understand their place in a divine plan. The 12 tribes of Israel began as the sons of a man named Jacob, flawed, passionate, and chosen. From the chaos of their family came the foundations of a nation. Through slavery and freedom, conquest and exile, unity and division, these tribes carried not just history, but identity, faith, and destiny. Some were lost, vanished into the winds of empire and time. Others endured, preserving sacred traditions that still influence the world today. Yet each tribe, whether remembered by name or shrouded in mystery, played a role in a story that stretches across continents, centuries, and belief systems. The 12 tribes remind us of the human journey, how easily unity fractures, how resilience can survive exile, and how identity, when rooted in purpose, can outlive even the greatest empires. Whether their blood flows in living descendants or their legacy survives through faith and tradition, the tribes of Israel are not forgotten. Their story isn't just ancient history. It's a mirror reflecting questions we still ask today. Where do we come from? What binds us together? And can the scattered ever be restored? If you found this journey fascinating, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into history, mystery, and legacy.